Hey everybody. So I wanted to talk to you guys today about argumentation. So this is my intro to argumentation video. So you have this PowerPoint, or I should say Google slide, on Schoology. So make sure that you are following along as I go through this. And I'm going to spend more time on some slides and less time on others, but hopefully you get something out of it. So here we go. Okay, so first, what is argumentation? What is argument? Well, as you can see from this definition, it's a reasoned attempt to convince the audience to accept a particular point of view about a debatable topic. Now, let me get on my soapbox for just a minute here, because there is, especially these days with social media, there is a lot of confusion as to what is and what is not argumentation. Or I should say, what is or isn't good argumentation. I mean, anybody can just argue. You see it all the time on social media. You're dumb. No, you're dumb. No, you're dumb. That's not arguing. Okay. I'm going to teach you how to argue at the college level, the academic level, a level that is actually helpful and beneficial to everybody involved. So, the whole point of argumentation is that we all have different opinions. We all have different views. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with having an opposing view on a given topic. That's fine. It's totally your prerogative. Where we get into trouble is when you try to shut down other people's opinions or other people's views simply because you just don't like them. Or they do that to you. That's not good. That's not helpful to anybody. What is helpful is to have a reasoned attempt to convince the audience. When you argue with someone, what you're trying to do is you're trying to convince them that you're right and they're wrong. And you do it in a reasoned or reasonable manner. Okay? Not name calling, not finger pointing, not blame attributing, but using logic, using evidence, using experts in a particular field. Those are the things that are going to hopefully convince your audience. Now, of course, there are going to be some topics that are so controversial or near and dear to the heart of your audience that no matter how much logic and facts and reason that you put behind your argument, you're just not going to convince them. And that's fine as long as you make an actual effort. I mean, that's all you can actually hope for. So the other thing is that you want to pick a debatable topic. Saying that arguing with somebody that the New York Jets were not a good football team this year, it's not really a debatable topic. Sorry, Jets fans. But they really, I mean, look at their record. They were not a good team this year. So, that's not a debatable topic. A debatable topic often has words like should or ought. We should outlaw this. We ought to make a ruling about this, things like that. Okay. So keep in mind that you want to keep your emotions in check when you argue. Okay. I know that we have a tendency, especially on social media, to get inflamed about, enraged about whatever we're passionate about, and that's all fine and good. But keep in mind that the more you allow emotion to control your argument, the more you're likely to turn people away from the things that you're trying to convince them about. Okay, because sometimes you get a little too emotional on it and you're going to come across as whiny or a little bit crazy, so not good. So keep your emotions in check, keep your logic intact, make it reasonable. So here we go. When you argue with somebody, if you're coming from a place of good faith, in other words, I'm not trying to bully you. I'm not trying to come into this argument with a closed mind. A good argument for both parties is one where both people approach that argument with an open mind. Understand that you don't know everything, and they don't know everything. And understand that there's a pretty good chance that when you discuss something with somebody else, that you might learn something you didn't before, and that's okay. You don't have to stick to your particular beliefs on that topic till the day you die. That's called learning, guys. It's okay to learn things. Now, I'm not saying that you have to change your mind about everything. You don't. You can keep your same convictions to the day you die. That's fine, as long as you are growing in your understanding of why you believe what you believe. So, for example, if after talking to somebody who's on the opposite side of the political spectrum from me, if after talking with them, I still remain on my particular side of the political spectrum, that's fine, as long as I'm open to the idea that maybe they taught me some things I didn't know before. Maybe that politician that I admired, maybe they aren't such a good person. Maybe I shouldn't admire them as much as I thought I should. Doesn't mean that I'm changing political parties, but I came away with new knowledge that strengthened and maybe somewhat altered my personal beliefs, and that's okay. Okay, so let's get away from this idea that you're always right, okay, and your opponent is always wrong. Let's come to the table of discussion and argumentation with the knowledge or the idea that maybe they know something I don't. Maybe I know something they don't. And maybe we can teach each other so that we can both grow. That's where change happens. So, that being said, there are 4 standards that you want to hold to when you're coming to the table of argumentation with somebody else. Convention of bilaterality. And what that is talking about is that when you argue, there needs to be multiple sides to an argument, okay? There's no point in me arguing with somebody who already agrees with me. There's just no point in arguing with them because they already agree with me. What's the point of that argument? You want to argue with somebody who disagrees with you so that you can try to change their mind or at least get them to see where you're coming from, okay? Convention of self-risk. Be aware, be open to the idea that if you're truly arguing with somebody and you're truly coming to the table in good faith and trying to learn, that there's a good chance that your previously held ideas about that topic might change. They're at risk of changing. There's the risk that when you argue with somebody about something, you might be wrong. I'll tell you the truth. I've been wrong a lot. I have argued with people about things that I was sure that I was right about. And after careful study, careful consideration, talking with them, and then doing my own research after the fact, I learned that, whoa, actually, I was kind of wrong about that. Be aware of that. Be okay with that. And don't realize that you're wrong and then stick to your wrongness and fight through that anyway just to be, just to win the argument. That's not helpful to anybody. If you realize that you're wrong about a certain point, acknowledge it. Be like, okay, you're right. I didn't think about that. Let me go and do some research on that and come back to you on that. That's okay. That's perfectly fine. The fairness doctrine. This is the idea that when you're arguing with somebody, you're not excluding information. You're not withholding information because it hurts your side. Okay. Um, I'm arguing with somebody and I'm trying to defend a certain politician, but I know that this politician has had some really nasty skeletons in their closet, and I'm aware of that, but I don't ever talk about those things, or when my opponent brings those things up, I brush them under the table. Oh, those aren't important. That's not being really fair. Okay, that's not being fair to the argument, to the heart of the argument. And then the commitment to rationality. Being right for the sake of winning is not what's important. It's not important that you win the argument. It's important that you and your opponent learn more about the topic. That's what's important. So use data, use statistics, use evidence, give reasons. Don't just say, well, I like this politician because I do, or because they're the political party that I subscribe to. Okay. Do you not have reasons aside from they are of the same political party? Look at what they've done. Look at their track record. Do you support their track record? I've talked to so many people politically this last election who said basically that they liked their particular candidate not because of their particular candidate's own merits, but because their candidate wasn't the opponent's candidate. I like politician A because they're not politician B. Well, that's not a reason to like them. Your politician that you support, your topic that you support, your side that you support should stand on its own merits and not stand because it's not the opposition. So these are the 4 standards of judgment, and they're very difficult. You know, even when I try to argue in good faith, there are times when I get really impassioned about a particular topic and I forget myself on some of these things. It's really hard to do, and it takes continual practice and years of practice. And social media is a terrible place to practice this stuff. Honestly, if you want to practice this stuff really and have a good chance at developing it, you really need to argue with people face to face. Okay, so here's your typical paper for an argument. It's very similar to what we did last semester. This is your typical paper for any sort of research paper. In an argument paper, you have your claim, which is like your thesis. It's the thing you're trying to prove. You have the evidence that you use. You have your explanation of that evidence. Now, something that an argument paper does that your typical research or informative paper doesn't do is an argument paper demonstrates knowledge of the other side. You want to show the other side. Now, why do you want to do that? You want to show the points that your opponent, in your paper, you want to show the points that your opponent would say, because you want your reader, who's a third person. So you've got you, who's person A, the person you're against, which is person B, that's who you're writing about. And then you've got person C, who is the person reading your paper. You want to convince person C that person B is wrong. The best way to do that is not by demonstrating all of your knowledge, but by demonstrating that you are aware of person B's knowledge, which is right here. You demonstrate, yeah, this is what my opponent believes. I've thought about what my opponent believes. I've thought it through. And here's why they're wrong. That's the important part. You say, I'm person A. I'm arguing with person B. Here's what person B believes. Here's why they are wrong. And what that does is it makes person C, who's reading your argument, to say, whoa, person A has really thought this through to the point where they've even destroyed their opponent's arguments. It makes your argument that much stronger. and then you have a conclusion. Okay, so we'll talk more about claims, but at the point, the point here is that the claim, think of it like your thesis statement. It's the thing that you're trying to prove. Your entire paper needs to go back to the claim. And traditionally, your claim has 3 sub-points to it, just like an outline thesis. Okay, so dogs are better than cats because of A, B, and C. Okay, that would be a claim. Okay, types of evidence you're going to use. 2 types, facts and opinion. Now, facts, you've got 4 different types of factual evidence. You've got scientific measurement, which is scientific method, things that are measurable. I can look at water retention. I can look at earthquakes. I can look at tornadoes, and I can measure those things scientifically. The way that nature works. I could look at like waterfalls. I could look at gravity, photosynthesis, look at the way that nature works and use that as evidence to prove my point if I'm doing something maybe scientific. Observations, eyewitness accounts. Maybe you're trying to prove that ghosts exist. So you might look at observational accounts, people that have claimed to have seen ghosts. Okay. Or extended scientific studies over time. We know that global warming is a thing because we can measure how the temperature, the core temperature of the Earth is steadily increasing. That's something that we can actually measure, and we have been measuring it. So, statistics, kind of self-evident. Statistics are data that you can use to prove your points. Okay, we'll have more on especially statistics later because statistics can be used pretty much maliciously to falsify information. So be careful with that one. Opinions. Now, let me caution you when you give opinions. When you're talking about evidence, your whole paper is your opinion. There's no reason to say in your paper that your evidence is a further explanation of your opinion. That doesn't do any good. Okay. Also, just because you know a guy who this applies to doesn't mean that you're right. Okay. Anecdotal evidence is not valid evidence. Just because you happen to know somebody who lived to be 80 years old and smoked 12 packs a day doesn't mean that smoking is harmless. Okay, just because you know a guy. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about on opinion evidence is expert opinions. And the more experts you have, or the more of an expert that person is, the stronger your evidence. Okay, if I'm giving you basketball advice, I don't know squat about basketball. So my opinion's stupid as far as basketball goes. But if I'm giving you advice about basketball and I'm quoting from Michael Jordan, well, now I'm onto something because his opinion is an expert opinion on that particular topic. More on this later. Okay, and again, these are some terms that we'll talk about later. Support and data, that's just evidence. The assumption is the conclusion that you make based on your evidence. And then appeals, we'll have a whole section on appeals. I'm not even going to really talk about that today. So just think about this. Is the last Star Wars film a good movie? If I asked you that question, the first thing you're going to need to prove, the first thing you're going to need to establish before you can make your claim is, what does the word good mean? How do you define good? Before you get into your argument about whether or not the last Star Wars film is a good one, you're going to need to define for your audience what makes a good film. What makes a good sci-fi film or a good Star Wars film? You're going to need to define your terms, and that's something to keep in mind when you are arguing. If you're arguing about stuff and a lot of the stuff that you're talking about is ambiguous, like love, for example, you're going to need to define what is love. Baby, don't hurt me. Anyway, so we'll have a whole thing on this, but just very quickly, ethos, pathos, logos. These are rhetorical appeals. These are ways that you can strengthen your argument by using these things. Appeals to character, in other words, credibility. You can use credibility to strengthen your argument. You can use emotion to strengthen your argument. You can use data, facts, statistics to strengthen your argument. The strongest arguments are the ones that use all three of these things in equal measure. Okay, and this is just more of the same. And again, kind of more of the same. So there's your intro to argumentation. And I kind of skimmed through the last few slides just because the next thing that we're going to talk about are those rhetorical appeals, ethos, pathos, logos, and I'm going to throw a fourth one at you, kairos. So, but I'll have a whole new video for that, so I don't want to spend any more time on that. So there you go. I hope that was helpful. Please make sure you answer the questions at the end of this on Schoology.